Hi, and welcome back to the HSP Connection with me, Philippa Robinson.
And me, Robbie Lee. This is where we share our stories, insights, and strategies to help fellow highly sensitive people navigate their own path to living a fulfilling and meaningful life. So, Philippa, what are we talking about today?
Well, I realize we always say, well, so
I do, we do.
yeah, exactly. So I chose today's conversation, although it is sort of one that we have on and off anyway, but I decided that I wanted to talk today about this idea of being different. Because I think, as HSPs, if we know whether we know we're an HSP or not as we're growing up, I should imagine a lot of listeners will resonate with the idea of feeling a bit different to everybody else, because I know we both felt like that. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit more, because it seems to be coming at me from every angle at the moment. And having spent a lifetime, well, probably up until about the last 5 years, of thinking being different is not what I wanted, and I wanted to fit in, I now love the idea that I'm a bit different. And I really want us to talk about that and kind of celebrate difference, because I think it's important, and especially for us HSPs who can be told at many opportunities that we need to be like everybody else, and being how we are is not good enough, or is not right, or all of those things. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about today. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I love this topic. You and I have talked about it on and off for a while, and I think it is very relatable for HSPs, and not just HSPs. I think this is really a conversation about diversity and uniqueness, and you know, and I relate to what you're saying about, especially, I mean, starting from the time I was a child, the feeling of being different was scary, because it's like I'm different and therefore less than. It's kind of how it always occurred to me. And there's something wrong with me. And if I look through my life, I didn't want to be different, but I also didn't want to be the same. Like, both of those things are true. Like, I love the label unique. I haven't always loved it. I really love it now. There's something, I think maybe I wanted to be accepted for being the unique individual that I am, because I want that for other people too, for people to be accepted. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's it's really wonderful to hear how you have changed the way that you think and feel about that.
Yeah.
And because we and out about whether to call this difference or unique, didn't we? And they
We
are
did.
not the same. But we decided before we started recording, we were going to call this episode different, because of that sort of key feeling from growing up, of feeling different. And especially when you're a kid, most, I think, children, young people go through wanting to fit in.
Yeah.
I think that's quite or maybe there is an opposite. I mean, I was definitely a fitter in. I wanted to fit in. I never felt like I fitted in, and I'm going to come on to a few of those in a minute. But I really desperately wanted to fit in. I also remember as a kid, there were some of my peers who seemed to be going out and out to not fit in, and I don't know how they felt inside. And maybe it was, I don't know whether that was confidence to be set apart and be who you are, or whether it was coming from a similar place that I was coming from, but was manifesting in a very different way. What were you like? Were you a wanting to fit in sort of
I
person?
mean, I constantly wanted to fit in as a kid and never felt like I did. Like my childhood just is experience after experience after experience of feeling like an outsider looking in, always wanting to be in the in crowd, never knowing how to do that, and always feeling like there was something wrong with me because of it. And yeah, and I know what you're talking about, like those kids, since we're talking about childhood, who like they were outside of the norm, but seemed to be okay with it. I imagine there's two groups of the outside the norm folks. There are the ones that are just like, I'm just over here being me, take me or leave me. And there's probably some that are like, you don't like me anyway, so I'm going to do this in defiance, or even though I secretly wish you would like me. There's probably all kinds of flavors. Because we're all
do you know
humans.
what? You saying all that is just making me feel like really strongly for every young person, teenager, even at primary school. I mean, it starts really early now. It's just making me really feel for all of them, because one way or another, I don't think anybody gets through those years like totally unscathed. I think we all come away from it with some very strong feelings, and probably patterns around how those years have made us feel. I wouldn't begin to even start to sum up what they could be. I can only really talk about mine, and you can talk about yours. But yeah, I really feel for everybody going through that, and also making me question, why is it so tough? But
and could we do something different for kids? We always go there. We're like, well, and how could we make it better?
Exactly. And we've talked a little bit about schools on a previous episode, and that's not for today. But
right.
And it's not just school, though. It's not just school's job to make kids sort of like happy and thriving and all that. School is a part of it, isn't it? So anyway, I just feel for all kids, young people, going through all that. And mine started, and I've always it's only recently I've been able to see how my sensitivity, that I wasn't aware of, played into a lot of me feeling different. I'll always put a lot of it down to the environment at home. So I was the only girl. I had 3 brothers, and I was always told that boys were better than girls. All the way along, my mum always used to say boys are better than girls, and I was like, okay, I'm your daughter, and you're saying that to me. So I always felt different because I was the only girl with 3 boys, and my mum called me Philippa because she went to school with somebody called Philippa, who was tall and athletic and beautiful and long blonde hair. And I was none of those. I had long blonde hair, but I was none of those things. So I was different to the way I was supposed to be. So yeah.
Oh, I'm just feeling for little Philippa right now. It's like,
I know, I feel for her too. So my feeling different, yes, it was not good enough, but it was also feeling different than the way I should be or was supposed to be. And that did start very young for me. And I think coupled with, now I know, was my high sensitivity, and I could read what was going on in a room, and I could tell when something wasn't right. I was the one that would be questioning what was going on, because there was always something going on to feel everybody else's feelings around and know that something wasn't right. And I remember being very young and being told to not meddle in things that weren't for children, and who do I think I am, asking questions like that. And I think now, just really sort of feeling into that, I think that made me feel different as well, because everybody else seemed to be just getting on with it, and I'm not, because I'm feeling it all. So that idea of being different has been ingrained for a long time.
Sounds like from the time you were on the scene. It's like, well, you weren't a boy and boys were better. And
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. It took a
And your
lot of working
namesake,
through.
you didn't look like your namesake, and
Yeah.
just, oh.
Yeah. Well, what about you? Did you have some quite young examples or stories that you can share with
Yeah,
us? Or maybe you
there's
don't.
two
Maybe.
things. Yeah, there's two things actually coming up. And they're both kind of around the concept of kindness, where it seemed like to me that kids were mean. Like it just and
Mm.
and here's my story. So we're walking home from school, a bunch of us in the neighborhood. We've gotten off the bus, we're all walking to our homes, and we're in the mountains, so there's lots of steep, and I slip and fall. And the reaction from the people with me is laughter, not, are you okay?
Mm.
Right. And I mean, I wasn't badly injured or anything, but it did hurt. It wasn't funny to me. And like that moment in time imprinted in me because it's come back to me a million different times in the world when I see someone else like fall, or like my instinct is never to laugh. Like there's so many videos out in the world, right? Where it's like people having a mishap and it's like, haha, let's laugh at them. And my response is always just like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Like I can't watch them because I'm
Okay.
just like, are they all right? Oh,
Yeah.
that looks terrible. Ouch. You know? Um, and
Oh,
so it was,
so
yeah.
resonate with that. When my family are showing them to me, I look at them and go, "Do you think that's funny?" And they just, they
And
just
they're
say,
like,
"Oh,
yes.
I'm just a killjoy." And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
"Wow!" But I'm like you. I'm feeling the pain of them, whatever they've
Yes,
just smacked their face into, or whatever it
exactly.
is. Yeah.
Exactly. There's physical pain often, and then there's that added layer of maybe embarrassment. And now they're
Oh,
on the internet and people are laughing at them, right? It's just it keeps going on and on. And yeah, my wife got used to me really quickly when I'm just like, don't show me that stuff. That stuff is not funny to me. It's just not funny. She's like, I know. But so that imprinted in me from a young age. That was elementary school that
yeah.
happened. And I just remember just like, oh wow, that's mean. Like people are mean. That's
Mm.
what the story I told. And then the other way that I really started noticing I was different was around religion. Like I I very much was a good girl and wanted to please my mom, and was told that this was what was true and real. And so I tried very hard to do that. But I kept coming up against things like, but if God is love, why would there be a hell? I don't understand why he would let people suffer for eternity. That doesn't feel very loving. So it was stuff like that. And it came up a lot. I didn't come here to intend to talk about religion, but these things just happen for us. So
They
um
do.
so it's just questions like that. And I was met with, well, there are things that you just don't understand, similar to kind of what you were saying, like don't poke your nose in some place. Mine
Mm.
was a slightly different flavor, but it was just like, I mean, don't question things. Like, don't question things that you couldn't possibly understand.
Yeah.
And it
That's
was
the
like,
way it is.
yeah, but there was always something in me that was just like, that doesn't feel right.
Mm. And that's a really great part of being an HSP, really, that we think and we process and we feel and then we question, because
Mm-hmm.
we want to understand, but also we kind of we want to bring it out into the open,
Yeah.
especially if it doesn't feel right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. And my desire was never to make something else wrong. It
Mm.
was just to understand, right? It was really just to understand. And yeah, I remember just constantly telling mom, well, if we're supposed to love everybody, then why do we do X, Y, and Z? Like, shouldn't we? That's just not loving, And I'm sure that was really annoying, to hear from a kid. But that's like, it's just one of like you said, it was one of the things in HSP, like we feel it different, deeply, we process it deeply, we sit with it. And there's something for me, I didn't have this language then, but it felt out of alignment. And so even though I was in the religion and I said I was part of that religion and I said I believed it, I felt differently from the rest of the people in it, because I had this thing that was like, that doesn't quite make sense. Not quite right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's hard, I think, when you, because as HSPs, we, it's an innate trait that we're born with. So we will be feeling those things from a really young age. Yeah. And when they are shut down, like very much, so for you it was around religion, for me it was around family dynamics and arguments and bad vibes and all that. When it's shut down, we unfortunately stop. One of the consequences can be we stop trusting that feeling that we get, and we either stop trusting it because what we're getting from the adults is that we're being told that's not right. So we either stop trusting it, we hide it away, we freeze it. I mean, for me, I feel like very much that sensitive part of me was frozen. It was waiting to be unfrozen, which it has been. But we can really shut it down in whatever way that we choose feels the right way to be shutting it down. And how amazing would it be if that part of us was nurtured and instead. And also the questions that I was asking and the questions you were asking were actually very valid questions.
Yeah.
Weren't they? And how would it have been if somebody had been able to be with us in our questions and talk to us openly and honestly about them, even if they didn't have the answers? It's just like, oh, is that what, that's obviously important to you, and what are you feeling about it, and how is that coming? I mean, I don't know. I don't profess to have all the answers. I just know that there could be a different way.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, as you were saying that, I was imagining myself being little Robbie again, and a parent coming and saying, like, helping me to trust my own thing.
Yeah.
Right. Which would be things like, oh, well, how do you feel about that? Oh, well, what feels right to you about that? Oh, that's interesting. Teaching us how to trust our own internal guidance system, instead of what happened to both you and I, which is we learn to in some way kind of shut it out or shut it down.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, now you've just mentioned that these conversations go all over the place, don't they? But I was having a conversation with my 16-year-old son the other day. He's nearly 17, and he was talking about various places around the city where we live, and like a few areas he's been in where in the evenings he doesn't necessarily feel comfortable. So like the gym he goes to, there is one route back that he will not take because he doesn't feel comfortable going that route. And I was saying to him how important that is to trust that feeling that he's got. And if he ever, I'm feeling really emotional just talking about it. If he ever feels like that, to trust that instinct and to go a different way, or to call somebody call me to come and pick him up, but don't override that feeling that something's not quite right, and just go and just do whatever it is that something inside him is telling him not to. And that's really important. And I can now say that to him and have that conversation with him, even though he sort of goes, oh yeah, but I know it's going in, and I can now have that conversation with him and see that in him and tell him how important it is, because I now understand high sensitivity and how important that is. And that's like, I don't know, that could be really important for him to have heard that.
It could be life-saving, honestly.
Yeah.
How wonderful that you can now see the importance of nurturing that and be able to give that to your son. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Even though you weren't able to get it yourself as a kid, you're now able to do something different for your children.
Yeah. And I think there's something very healing for me going on by being able to talk to my children like that. it's kind of healing that hurt part of me as well at the same time. Yeah. Oh gosh, these conversations do take some turns, don't they?
They do.
Yeah, one of the other things that I wanted to talk about was I've always had this obsession, right, with what does it mean to be the black sheep of the family?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I always thought, I don't know why, I don't know where this came from, and who must have said it around me for me to have thought this all these years, that being the black sheep of the family meant sort of being like the naughty one or the bad one or the one that was going to go off the rails or whatever. It was like the black sheep stood out for all the wrong reasons, or wrong in inverted, in whatever. And I was like desperate not to be the black sheep of the family, and that really played into my people pleasing tendencies that we've talked about before. And recently, not recently, but I've only been on social media in the last 3 years. I never touched social media before because I knew it wasn't going to be good for my mental health, and it's still a work to try and make sure it's not bad for my mental health. But I have seen lots of posts on Instagram in particular about being the black sheep of the family, and it's really piqued my interest because this has been an interest of mine for a long time. And it really shocked me when I understood that when people talk, or the people I have seen talking on Instagram about being the black sheep of the family, are talking about that in a way, not about it being the bad one, but about it being the one that is different, because all the black sheep is in a field full of white sheep, so it's the one that doesn't fit in, it's the one that's different. And when I realized that, it dawned on me, I'm the bloody black sheep of my family. And how wonderful that is, actually.
Yeah.
Having embraced my sensitivity and realizing how different I was. I'm not saying there aren't any other members of my birth family that are highly sensitive, but I don't think there are many of them. And I think my mum might have been, and she's not around. She died a few years ago. That's awful. I can't remember quite how many years ago. 5, I think. And I had a troubled relationship with my mother, so it's anyway. But yeah, understanding that I am actually the black sheep of my family has actually been a great joy for me, and that is all about embracing the difference, that I am different, and that not only is it okay, it's actually quite wonderful.
I love that so much, Philippa.
I know.
It's like a reclaiming of it is kind of what I'm hearing, because I do think, certainly when I was growing up, the messages of being a black sheep were negative, like you were talking about.
Okay.
So I don't think you made that up. I think, I think that was part of, what was trying to get across. It's just like, you need to fit in, you need to be like everybody else. The black sheep is doing something wrong over here. But now what I'm hearing is that people are reclaiming that and saying, I am the black sheep.
Yeah.
And I'm fabulous.
Yeah,
exactly. It's like, because gosh, when people, this is one of the things that you and I love so much, when people are actually true to themselves and are being their glorious self in the world, they're not going to be like everyone else. And that's amazing. Like they're bringing something incredible to the world. So, I'm hearing the reclaiming of that black sheep story. It's like, I am the black sheep. I am different. And look what gifts my difference brings. You're welcome.
You're welcome. Exactly. And a lot of what I've seen about reclaiming the black sheep sort of status has all been around generational trauma, actually. And it's the black sheep that is the one that stands up and goes, okay, this ends with me. I am going to do the healing work that is needed so that I don't pass this on.
That gave me chill bumps.
Yeah. And so I feel that's very definitely been my place, certainly in the women of my family. I was the only girl. I don't have daughters. It sort of ends with me down my family line. And I definitely feel like I have healed a lot of my own trauma. So I don't pass a lot of it on to my kids. I'm not saying I'm not going to pass any of it on to, because we all end up screwing our kids up one way or another. But I have done a lot of my own work. And I also feel like if this is not a bit woo, I'm healing backwards for the generations behind me. And that feels like a really wonderful place to be. I'd like to say that I did it voluntarily and, look at me and my courage. I mean, I suppose I have had courage to go through it, but equally I did not. I didn't enter it willingly. I went kicking and screaming, but and was forced to by losing the sight in my eye and all those things and what happened afterwards. But also now being this person who I find myself being today, and knowing that I'm different to a lot of the people that I work with. I am different in the way that I process stimuli. My brain works differently to members of my family, to people I work with, to people I come across every day. That is okay. And I just have like this little inner, like, oh yeah, I'm a bit different. It's great. That's just me. That's just me being me. And most of the time, it is wonderful. And I have my bad days like everybody else does. I'm still a work in progress. But embracing that, and I keep coming across the word misfit a lot. And I listened to a podcast called Misfits, and it was all about people who feel like they haven't fit in or been able to fit in all their life. And listening to those people, it was just wonderful. And so being a misfit is okay. Being weird, being nerdy, being geeky, our sense of humor might not be for everybody. I mean, but we get on really well, and that's all that we have a really great time and a laugh, and we're on a similar wavelength, and that's all that really matters, that we have that connection.
Yeah.
And whatever word one wants to put on that difference is fine by me, because frankly I'm just quite happy being me, so it doesn't matter.
Yes. Oh, that brings me so much joy to hear you say that and owning that. Yeah. And it always makes me think about biodiversity. Like I'm looking outside right now at trees. And when I think about like the society kind of wants everybody to be the same and do the same and behave the same and think the same way and look the same way. Like, how freaking boring. Like, I mean, we don't go in our garden and plant just one thing and then that one thing looks exactly the same. Like every single thing in my garden, every flower, every tree, every fern, every blade of grass, it's all unique. And within each of those, I mean, there's so much biodiversity there, right? But if we were looking at one exact replica of each other over and over again, yeah. I mean, we'd get bored.
We absolutely would. And this comes back to what you said right at the beginning. And we both, before we started recording, we both said that we felt like this. We've had this great desire to fit in, but also we love being different. We love not being fitting in.
Yeah.
We love being unique. And actually, I think really at our heart, all of us want to be embraced for who we truly are, HSPs or not. We want to be embraced for who we truly are. And how amazing would it be if we could just embrace every individual for the unique human being that they are, and stop trying to fit everybody into these boxes.
Right.
And that ties in with what we said about school. It ties in with what we said before about work. I mean, it's just across the board, isn't it? So
yeah. And it makes for a stronger society if we allow people their differences, right? Because different perspectives will bring in different things, and different ways of handling things, again, strengthens us. Like if you think about biodiversity again, the reason everything works is because there's so much diversity. And we're seeing that as that goes away, there are impacts to us, negative impacts. Same with humans. right? But people who have different ways of thinking and who process things differently and whose creative brains look at things from different angles, like all of that adds to the strength of society if we're able to celebrate that in people instead of telling them there's something wrong with you because you're doing it differently. It's like, why don't we learn from them instead? What if that was our go-to way, was to seek to understand and to learn something from this person who's presenting differently? That would add to our society. They say I get fired up about it.
I love it when you get fired up. I'm sitting here watching you, like going, yes, she's off. Exactly. I couldn't agree more. And we know that we've touched on something that's really important to you when you go, you're going in there. And I totally agree with what you've just said. And that takes us back to another thing that you started off when you were telling us about kindness. And, kindness is at the very core of this being of embracing uniqueness in everybody, kindness and love, they just really are. And just to wrap us up, I wanted actually to bring us back to an episode that we did a few weeks ago on forgiveness. Because when I was thinking about what we were going to, that we were recording this today and what we were going to say, I found myself thinking about that forgiveness episode and, how as part of embracing my difference, I have, without realizing it, but now I know because we talked about that in forgiveness, is I've forgiven myself for all that trying to fit in and denying those parts of me that I felt were unacceptable because I didn't fit in. So I can embrace all those parts now. And I think it shows. People who have known me for a long time say things to me like, you seem different, and in a good way, not like totally different, like they don't even recognize me, but I'm just much more present. And I think that's because I've kind of pulled all my bits, all the parts of me together. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I can relate to what you're saying too. It feels like I'm just more me. Like,
yeah. I mean, who else could you be? But I totally get that. I totally get that.
But I spent, my childhood and my 20s and part of my 30s and part of my 40s trying to fit someone else's, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm just more me. It's more authentically me. And you're right. Like for me, it also took self-forgiveness and it still takes lots of self-compassion and self-love.
Yeah.
Because I sometimes need to remind myself still that being me is just perfect and okay.
It is. It absolutely is. And I'm glad you're more you. We want more Robbie.
We want more Philippa. I love that for you too. Yes. Yeah. And this is genuinely how I feel about humans. Like I want people to be who they are.
Yeah.
I think we'd have a better world. I know we'd have a better world.
I agree. I totally agree. And I suppose until that time, find some people who you can be the real you with.
Yes.
Find those special people in your life and nurture those relationships where you can be the real, true you.
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think
this was a great topic. Thank you for bringing it to the table.
Yeah, I've enjoyed this. Good. Thank you for having this conversation with me. And always. To anybody who is, all of you who are listening, thank you for listening. And I think for now, it's goodbye from me.
And bye from me.
Thanks for listening to HSP Connection. If you've enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes. Also, we'd really appreciate it if you could rate the podcast and share it with anyone you think might be interested. It helps others find us. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can also leave us a review.
To get in touch with us, you can email us at hspconnectionpodcast@gmail.com. And we'd love to hear from you with your thoughts and comments on the episodes and any suggestions you have for future topics and guests.
We are both HSP coaches and speakers. And to find out more about Robbie, go to Robbie Lee, that's leigh.com.
And to find out more about Philippa, go to safeandsupported.co.uk. See you next time.